Okay, history. Come with me on a race through manga history. You need to concentrate because we haven't got a lot of time for all this. So take a deep breath, observe, research, discuss, imagine. There will be questions, there will be a test at the end. Okay, so where does manga come from and what is it? Well, we all think we know manga. I thought I knew manga, and then I found I didn't. Manga are really packages, containers for hopes and dreams and fears. And manga are where we decode our ideas about Japan against its own ideas. And we learn that decoding through the language of line, a narrative language that's quite separate from words. But if we don't know its history, we won't see it clearly. We will see it as alien and other. And it actually isn't alien or other. It's actually much closer to home than you think. I'm going to show you the Englishman who started manga and who is still respected in Japan with a ceremony at his graveside every year in Yokohama Foreigner Cemetery. Now, the distinctive line of manga actually does start to take shape really early on, and it evolves through a graphic sensibility from mysticism into religion and from observing culture to commenting on it. First paid for by the rich and powerful, like all art, but gradually colonizing the streets. But this guy, the guy at the top, Charles Workman, British, London boy, artist, I am so proud of you, Charlie, went to Japan, set up a whole stream of businesses, one of which was teaching European painting to Japanese artists, very fashionable, very trendy. And that's one reason why one side of Japan's art establishment loves him. But this is the other reason. Japan Punch, a little expatriate fanzine that became the fulcrum that tipped the Japanese graphic tradition in the direction we now call manga. An Englishman invented contemporary manga. Don't let anybody tell you anything different. Charlie taught the Japanese everything that they knew in the 1860s, and they very quickly went on with this. But at the beginning of the 1900s, Australian gap year art student Frank Nankyville, en route to Europe, befriended Rakuten Kitazawa, who became a major player in comics and political cartooning, making his own comics, that one down there at the bottom, in Italian. And the Japanese comics industry roared through the 20s and 30s. Artists and intellectuals saw comics as a new way of editing the world. And this guy, Issei Okamoto, the Japanese Jason King of the 20s, saw comics as graphic movies, as you can see there at the end. He wrote Japan's first comic technique manual in 1928, the year this guy, Osamu Tezuka, was born. He was inspired by Japanese and Western culture, and he made his debut, if you'd click again, please, in 1946, age 16, with this little thing, Ma-chan's Diary. He died age 60, and he worked almost every minute in between. His fans called him Manga no Kami-sama, the god of comics, for good reason. Tezuka was an astonishing creative powerhouse and the major creative figure, in my view, of the 20th century in Japan. Mishima, forget Mishima. This guy could teach him everything. Now, Tezuka was a phenomenon. He was a story factory. He had more ideas than he ever used, and he left the notebooks to prove it. But he had a scientist's brain, and he had the most astonishing range of technical graphic skills. He established the studio systems common in Japanese comics today, and the aim, faster work, easier work, more standardized work, higher productivity, very Bauhaus. But his characters and themes are immensely varied. Adventure, love, war, history, injustice, slavery, crime and punishment, and yes, that is a version of the great Russian novel done as a comic. Science and technology, all the themes that mirror our ideas of how we came to be who we are and what we might be. But in every movement, old lions die, young lions come in. And in the 1950s, young artists who'd worked with Tezuka reacted against his dominance of the market and made new edgy work in a style they call gekiga, or drama pictures. Tezuka responded to this by making gekiga of his own. However, the manga movement had dealt with the horrors of war through a focus on technology as the road to a bright new future. But it was ambivalent. It couldn't avoid the fact that the atom was a fearful weapon as well as a powerful tool. In America, the apocalypse was on film. In Japan, it was drawn, and it still is. Now, Japanese comics made their way to the West through American servicemen, through trade, through occupation, through immigration, And they offered a culture that had embraced readers of all kinds and all ages. We tried to sell them exclusively to the people we think should have comics, teenage boys, but they just refused to stay in that little tiny box. Although they marketed very successfully to teenage boys, Naruto, Akira, all kinds of comics that still do, there was a lot more to them than that. Beautiful work from Hiroki Endo, absolutely gorgeous. You do get realism in manga as well as all forms of distortion. Okay, so when this moves on, I'm going to tell you what they achieved that American comics have never managed. When I was a girl in Britain, we had a girls' comic culture. We let it die. Japan never did. Japan's girl comic buyers have their own industry, and it's what Americans have never managed. They got girls all over Europe and America buying comics again, for which I shall love them forever, if nothing else, because comics are a wonderful place to work out who you are and who you might be, and for girls to be denied that is terrifying. In the beginning, this was a cultural exchange, and it still is. Western comics influenced Japanese artists, and in locally created versions of major characters, we see all kinds of issues. But Japanese artists also influence Western artists, and you can see there a whole page of entirely Western art working in the manga sensibility, whereas here is a whole page of entirely manga art inspired by Western characters and Western sensibility. Monkey Punch's Lupin III, inspired by Mad. A Batman by Kiya Asamiya, and several versions of Ryuichi Ikegami's Spider-Man, quite different from the Western Spidey, but still enormously popular in Japan. And the circle of artistic life. Artists like Junko Mizuno have brought pop art into manga, while others like Takashi Murakami have made manga into pop art and colonized the galleries of the world with these high-priced bits of pop fiction. So the circle of artistic life is running from the beginning in Edo all the way through low culture back to high culture. You certainly couldn't afford this Takashi Murakami life-size piece on a low culture salary. It's a very interesting thing to me, the way manga has colonized high art once again after starting off as a high art cultural phenomenon. But unfortunately, this culture is now being ravaged by a new tsunami, broadband. The Japanese are responding to it with mobile phone and downloadable comics, but the wave of downloading, particularly pirate downloading, is destroying artists' intellectual property and changing the landscape of publishing, and despite desperate efforts, there's no way to avoid this incoming wave. The tsunami of digital publishing has already crashed on us, and artists are losing a large proportion of their income. There are manga which will never be translated because the market has been cut to shreds by illegal downloads. So what will the landscape of manga be like as the digital future crashes over it and through it? This really is a new disaster. It's not as serious as the disaster on the coast of Tohoku for those living it, but it's just as serious for manga. From its aftermath, I hope a new kind of phoenix will rise. I'll be doing my best to see it clearly. I expect to see it first in manga. I hope artists survive it. Thank you. Thank you very much.